Doesn't seem... Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're about to start in a minute, so if you could please take your seats. We're just waiting for a couple more people, but we also live streamed, so some of the people will be able to watch online. This will be an English-only event. So some of the people, of course, decided to maybe stay online, but it's actually 10:05, so we could start. Well, warm welcome on the side of the Center for the Study of Democracy and our partners from the Enterprise Europe Network. I'm very happy that we could do this in person. It's very, very important today, in this hot day when, if you've seen all the titles of the European media, your weekend reads would be a very worrying winter coming in with rationing of gas, coldness, bears walking around and stoking us, and so on and so forth. Now, as you know, CSD has been for many years working on the domain of linking science and policy making. And I'm very happy that today we also have a great panel from people from the policy making, from the European Commission, but also people from the business community in Bulgaria, to which we look forward for a very interesting panel afterwards. Now, I will just open up with a couple of ideas of why today's discussion is particularly important for Europe, but also for Bulgaria. We should not forget that the crisis that we're currently living in is just we should not focus on the short term, that Europe was already preparing for that transition, and that this crisis is actually pulled in or has actually accelerated, or will probably accelerate or change that transition course. But at the same time, I think we should not lose the vision of what we are actually working on here. So while until now we were primarily worried for our children's future on sustainability, now we are worried also for the children of Ukraine, of course, most notably right now, the war going on in Ukraine, but also the future of Europe, because the war in Ukraine is essentially an attack on Europe's unity, Europe's identity, and Europe's fundamentals. So that said, this is very important for the European internal market and all the other different policies. Now, not forgetting this long-term policy strategy, we should be aware that, and I think we were starkly reminded, that the energy policy trilemma that we formulated more than a decade ago between sustainability, security, and competitiveness is here to stay. And it will not go away with the current gas and energy crisis. It will stay for the longer term. And I think the important thing is that we've always been able to get through such crises with technological solutions, and that's what today's discussion is all about. Now, where does the Center for the Study of Democracy come in? We've just piloted and we've presented in both Berlin and Brussels two tools. One is the Energy and Climate Security Risk Index, which shows how Europe very willfully decided that its transition is going to depend on Russian gas. Now, clearly, I think everyone understands that this was a strategic mistake more than a decade ago, that we stuck through, also after 2014. And we now need to bear the cost of that. And again, I think the solution to that would be the same technological development to low carbon or to decarbonizing our economy. The second is CSD is doing a lot of scenario planning, and that's already about Bulgaria. How are we going to become climate neutral, carbon neutral by 2050? And this requires a lot of changes, both socially, economically, huge investments, but primarily and first and foremost, it requires technological upgrading. And there are different understandings, and I think the common agreement is that right now we still do not have the technologies that will be able to make us carbon neutral by 2050 without relying on transition fuels such as gas or nuclear. And this is where today's discussion comes in. I'm very happy that we will be presenting, and there will be the team leader who prepared that study of the European research area on carbon-intensive industry, Angelo Ville, who is also here with Dr. Evgeny Evgeniev, a colleague of ours whom many of you know, and who will be presenting that European research area study. When I first saw this study, frankly, I thought, hey, the European Commission is actually becoming more and more like a CSD think tank. You know, they were thinking the same way that like we're thinking, you know, someone that is actually looking at the very important technology development, but also policy-wise. You know, I was really struck by the depth and comprehensiveness of the report. So if you haven't read it, I urge you to look through the executive summary. It's really a great policy report with a lot of technological depth. So you will get a lot of, I think, insights of what can be done. Now, without much ado, I would like to give the floor in the opening to Dr. Angelo Ville, who is the head of unit E1 in the Prosperity Directorate of the...
Deputy.
Deputy, yeah. Well, that's, I knew you were deputy, but then I only saw the head, you know, on your title.
That's okay.
So Angelo, thanks for making the time to come over, and they're coming also from a discussion in Germany, which was very, very well visited, and a lot of business interest in that. So I really look forward to your welcoming to Dr. Evgeniev's presentation, and most notably to our business community that we'll be discussing afterwards in the panel. Angelo?
Thank you, Ruslan. No, very much, and welcome everybody. I'm very happy to see the room already quite full. We're looking forward very much to the exchange, the practical exchange later on. And then I believe from what organizers told me that also the digital attendance is actually very large, and I welcome that very much. So without saying more on context, because Ruslan has set the scene very well, it's an extremely difficult period which energy-intensive industries go through. And this period is not going to stop anytime soon. There are months, hopefully not years, to come in which the situation will be extremely tight for these industries. Eastern European member states have a lot of presence of energy-intensive industries. This is one of the things which we analyzed in this industrial technology roadmap Ruslan was referring to, that there are actually many, many countries which have cement and steel and other energy-intensive industry plants, chemicals, very important. I take your statement that our industrial technology roadmap for low carbon technologies and energy intensive industries is something which is almost as good as the CSD work. I take that as a compliment, because we are not as good as Ruslan's institution is in doing this type of analysis. But what we tried under ERA is indeed to give a comprehensive overview of where we stand in the development of relevant technologies and what might need to be done in order to develop them further and bring them to the market. Why is that so important? And why did we in 2020 already voice this in the ERA, in the new ERA communication, where we launched this concept of industrial technology roadmap? It is because we always wanted to accelerate the development and the uptake in the market of technologies which can help the Green Deal. The transformation of industries, no matter which ones, to become more circular, to become more low carbon. That's what we try to help with. Now, as Ruslan has said, the current developments have not put an obstacle to that, even though there might be other things at the forefront of the heads of industrial representatives today, and we can very well understand that. But it is a stark reminder that we have to accelerate. We have to accelerate this transformation with the means we have. Nobody expects miracles, but we have a lot of tools which we can employ. And if we have the will, the political will and the entrepreneurial will, it will not be Europe to stand in the way of facilitating that technological development. And then very much the uptake also of these technologies. That's a very important point, in particular in Eastern European countries. So just to say one word more on the industrial technology roadmaps, we have one roadmap on these low carbon technologies and energy intensive industries already published. That was on, I think, the 8th of April or 7th of April, and you have the link already in the documents for this event. And we're working on another one, which is very closely related. This is about circular technologies and business models. And last word, why is DG RTD doing something like this at all? Because the task of our unit in DG RTD is a little bit to be the interface to industrial policy in the European Commission. And that is something important to note, that we have industrial strategies which are very, very prominent in the public perceptions, more prominent than the ERA, for example, would be. And these industrial strategies, they have even been updated in 2021, you might remember that, and you will find the industrial technology roadmaps in that. And one link which we now successfully created from Commission side, and I think it's also reflected in industry and in member states, is that our industrial technology roadmaps are seen to be a key element of input to what the Commission calls transition pathways. And that's the keyword you used, Ruslan, that this transition, we know it has to happen. Technology is not the silver bullet to it. There are many, many things like skills and regulatory framework conditions which are extremely important, but technology plays a key part, a key role in this. So in these transition pathways, they are coming now bit by bit from the European Commission. You will see within the next months the transition pathway on construction, industrial ecosystem, on the textiles industrial ecosystem, and the energy intensive industries pathway is a little bit delayed because of the current turmoils, but it's going to come as well. So we are feeding, these industrial technology roadmaps feed into these transition pathways in terms of policy making inside the Commission. So I'm looking forward very much to your practical views also, how useful this discussion is, what we can do together with member states and with industry. Thank you, Ruslan.
Thank you, Angelo. And indeed, we're very lucky, I should say, in today's circumstances to be part of the European Union and to rely on the knowledge and expertise, of course, of the Commission and all the other partners within Europe, because I think, the industrial supply chains, and we are all in this together. So I think a joint response will be very much important. And I'm very happy that next to turn to Petr Vavra, who is Deputy Head of Mission of the rotating President of the European Council right now, the Czech Republic. We've always looked very much to the example of the Czech Republic, to the way industry has worked there, the way it has developed and transitioned throughout the years. So we very much hope that the Czech presidency will take forward this transition. Of course, it will be working together and helping the European business make that transition faster, because as we understand, both on technology but also on the needed investment, we'll rely a lot on the private sector, and very much look forward also to the panel discussion and what the Bulgarian businesses have to say. Petr, floor is yours.
Dobar den, dami gospoda. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to present the priorities of the Czech presidency in the field of energy security and transformation. As you probably know, our government chosen as the motto of our presidency for the next semester, Europe as a task, rethink, rebuild and repower. We had also our discussion with France and Sweden about the priorities, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February has brought the necessity of a fundamental reassessment of the EU priorities and significantly influenced the preparation of the Czech presidency's priorities. The Czech presidency will address the urgent security issues while carrying on with the original identified files such as the green and digital transition of the EU economy. And what are the political priorities of the Czech presidency? They are divided into 5 cross-sectoral flagship areas. They aim at responding to current challenges as well as at pursuing the EU's long-term objectives. So the first one is connected very much with the actual situation. That means managing a refugee crisis and post-war recovery of Ukraine. The second one is connected with the topic today, energy security. The third one, reinforcement of European defense capacities, including cybersecurity. Fourth one, strategic resilience of EU's economy. And the fifth one, resilience of democratic institutions. As you can see, energy security is one of the political priorities, but the topic is to a certain degree reflected in other priorities as well. The EU cannot be vitally dependent on countries that directly threaten its security and must therefore break its dependence on Russian gas, oil and coal. The Czech presidency will put emphasis on the EU's energy security issues, which are currently more pressing than the energy transition, and on the accelerated implementation of Repower EU, an important part of which is diversification of sources, including logistic, energy savings, and acceleration of the transition to low-emission and renewable energy resources. The Czech presidency is ready to work on the implementation of the regulation of gas reserves, that means filling the storages in the run-up to winter, and the promotion of voluntarily joint purchases, so that the EU uses its weight in a way similar to the purchase of vaccines. The decarbonization of the EU industry and transition from natural gas to hydrogen represents an important goal, requiring the implementation of an ambitious plan for the development of the basis for decarbonization. However, the Czech presidency will focus especially on thorough implementation of the main short-term objective. That means remove dependence on Russian fossil fuels. The Czech presidency will also deal with energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy. At the same time, the development of energy infrastructure is crucial, as it will strengthen the energy resilience of the EU as a whole. Finally, the Czech presidency will deal with the role of nuclear energy in ensuring the EU's energy security and meeting the EU climate goals. In the field of transport, the presidency will concentrate on reducing emissions, promoting environmentally friendly modes of transport and infrastructure for alternative fuels as a key prerequisite for the development of clean mobility. At the same time, it will focus on the development of the trans-European transport network in order to facilitate transport flows across member states while supporting the decarbonization of transport. At the same time, the Czech presidency will work on implementing an appropriate mix of instruments that will reduce the negative social and economic impact of high energy prices. The transition towards carbon neutrality must be accompanied by efficient social measures, for example, by supporting energy savings in households. Energy savings are becoming increasingly important in view of inflationary pressures and rising energy prices. So that's what is on a table for the Czech presidency in the field of energy security as a priority for our presidency.
Thank you, Petr. Just to mention that Petr is a Bulgarian graduate from the University of National World Economy, so if you'd like to approach him on that matter too, that'll be great. Let me say that we, as you know, Bulgaria is currently in a continuing, I should say, political crisis. And we'll rely, of course, a lot on our friends from Europe and the Commission to keep us on track, essentially. And I think this is something that has helped tremendously this country stay in the course of development and work on the prosperity of its citizens in the end of the day. I think what you mentioned, Petr, of course, is that energy security right now is of the utmost short-term priority. But I think there is a consensus and agreement that we need to speed up the energy transition. And how to make this, I think we are going to look now with the following presentations. But before I invite them, I just wanted to excuse the Minister of Education and Science who called in, said he did feel sick, so he didn't want to jeopardize us. So we won't be able to have his presentation. But I believe that our presence here, and of course the presence of the business community, will be very important that we carry this forward. And I think it is of utmost importance that we understand that only united within Europe we can make this transition, but also we need to understand in depth the technological developments that are happening throughout the world, because energy security will not go away after we solve the gas crisis issue, and we will solve it. And as always, we'll rely a lot on technologies. But then we'll have other issues, with dependence on metals and minerals and whatnot. So the important thing is that we make also the right policy decisions, because clearly what we are handling right now is that we made a wrong decision somewhere along the way, and we need to be able to correct that. Now, without much ado, I would like to thank my co-partners in crime here at the opening, Angelo and Petr, and ask my colleague Martin Vladimirov, who will be moderating the panel discussion, and also Dr. Evgeny Evgeniev, who will be presenting the European Research Area study, and Dr. Ustino Primov from CSD, who will be presenting CSD scenarios for Bulgaria's transition to step up at the podium, and will be giving you this space. And we look forward to an interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Ruslan. I think I'm speaking too loud. This was a great introduction, great framing of the discussion. Now we'll go deep into the details of it. I would second what Ruslan was saying about DG Research's amazing report on the future of low carbon technologies in industrial sector. And I would say that this is the right time, this is the best time to accelerate the speed of low carbon transition in the industrial sector, because this is the most expensive time probably in industrial history in terms of energy prices, in terms of cost of production, and in terms of difficulties for the competitiveness of European industry when we look at a global competition environment. So low carbon transition pays off. It actually decreases costs for the industry, and it would make the European economy more competitive vis-a-vis China, the US, and other players. But how can we accelerate this process? How can we switch the gears to this decarbonization? Well, we need to put together the enormous technological and research and innovation potential that Europe has to this goal. And it's not only about climate now, it's also about security. Decarbonization of the industry would mean that Europe will become more independent in these testing times, and it would help this clean break, clean decoupling from the dependence on authoritarian states. I wouldn't say only Russia, but as Ruslan alluded, the future of energy security, energy and climate security, would be China, and the dependence on supply chains, metals and minerals from different politically unstable or authoritarian countries around the world. The way forward will be for Europe to pick up its own potential and become more independent from these supply chains. With no further ado, I'll give the floor to Dr. Evgeny Evgeniev, who will present DG Research's report, which brings forward I think the nexus between low carbon technology and financing instruments and different platforms for basically making these technologies happen. Because it's one thing to have them created by researchers and scientists in universities. It's another thing to commercialize them and bring them to a much higher industrial scale. So how can the European Commission help in this process, and what is the kind of the nexus with the coordination with the member states? Evgeny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, dear colleagues and friends. Good morning also to the online community, because I understand we are under live stream, so there is an audience from Europe and beyond Europe. I'm happy to present to you this morning the report on Industrial Technology Roadmap for Low Carbon Technologies in Energy-Intensive Industries, which was published in April this year. And the main role of this report, the purpose of this report is to facilitate development and deployment of low carbon technologies in energy-intensive industries across Europe. What I'm going to look at today is a little introduction, the policy context. Then I will go into the details of some key findings, conclusions and actions of the report, and I'll move to the next step, which is the European Research Area, Action 12. And this action is under the European policy agenda that deals with the acceleration of the twin transition, the digital and the green transition in Europe, in Europe's key industrial ecosystems. So dear colleagues and friends, on the policy context, we do have the critical time today to focus on industrial decarbonization because of the context, which is on the one side the European Green Deal, which is a priority of the European Union, and on the other side is the current international context with the war in Ukraine, which we all are impacted from. And what we have to understand is that a lot of the industrial decarbonization aspects can be solved by focusing on energy-intensive industries. One of the big responses of the European Commission is the REPowerEU, which came in mid-May this year on the international context to convince everybody in Europe that there is a need to accelerate electrification, there is a need to focus on renewable energy, hydrogen, and enhancing our also low-carbon manufacturing capabilities. So our report, the report of the Commission, exactly focuses on these needs. What we emphasize on in the report is a list of key technologies that we look at, and we have used expertise, also external expertise for these key technologies. We outline scenarios, and we provide tools for leveraging R&I investments. We focus also on public R&I investments, green patenting activity, framework conditions like regulatory frameworks, valorization and standardization aspects. What I would like you to look at now is at the map of energy-intensive industries across Europe. You see industries in the cement, ceramics, chemicals, glass, fertilizers, lime, non-ferrous metals, steel, refining, pulp and paper, all across Europe, not only in Bulgaria, all across Europe. So this is an important industry indeed. It represents the industry in the form of 550,000 companies that employ 8 million people, and that they give a value added of close to 550 billion euro, which represents 4.55% of EU GDP as of recent data, 2019. What we have, however, is not an equal distribution of green gas emissions. As you see the upper graph on the right side, the big industrial producers like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland provide the biggest shares of green gas emissions by member state. And as you see, some of the Eastern European members, not only Bulgaria, are also polluters in this respect. The concentration of green gas emissions by sector is also important to mention. We noticed from our studies that the non-metallic mineral products represent 23%, the basic metals 21%, chemical products 90%, and so forth, in terms of concentration of greenhouse gas emissions. What we looked at in the report is also the R&I investment needs, and we realized from the Capgemini report issued in 2020 that the drive to market scale, which is the orange part of the graph, which targets TRL levels 9 to 10, needs to fill gaps in terms of R&I investment needs. Then we have the second green, the acceleration of the and scale up, where we have to start investing in 2020-2030 period. We have started already on TRL levels 4 to 8. But finally, we do need to invest also in order to meet the 2030 and 2050 Green Deal targets. We need to invest also on TRL levels 1 to 3. We can start slow in the years up to 2030, but it needs to grow also in order to match the needs, the R&I investment needs by 2050. We have looked also at updated reports of European partnerships like the Process for Planet partnership, which includes all those important industries in the energy-intensive sectors. And we find this interesting graph that I present to you, which estimates, the Process for Planet partnership estimates 4.5 billion investment needs until 2050. And you see the distribution in terms of TRL levels, 1 to 3 is a little close to 2.5 billion, with more investment at the beginning of the first decade. Then we have TRL 4 and 6 levels, 7 and 8, and 9. Altogether, by 2030, we need to invest in Europe, in investment projects identified by this European partnership, about 20 billion euro. But this is just for development of new technologies. For deployment of technologies, Europe has to invest 24 times more. So we're talking about 830 billion euro in deployment of these same technologies. What we found is also investments in terms of R&I financing of Energy Union R&I priorities. And we understand that the private sector, which is represented also in the panel to deliberate today on these issues of energy-intensive industries and decarbonization. It is indeed, in fact, the private sector which invests, and the expectation is to invest about 83% of overall R&I, research and innovation investment. And when we compare EU with US, we find we are comparable in terms of share of GDP of R&I financing. But if you look at Japan, Korea, and China, the share of GDP is much higher in R&I investment, in Energy Union R&I priority. So Europe needs to catch up substantially. And you find the data, by the way, for 2014 to 2018. This is the most updated version as of April 2022, because the data comes with a big delay. So we cannot analyze. In fact, we found big difficulties to analyze data because these data should come from member states. These data should be tracked on a regular basis, monitored at the EU level, and we don't find that available at the moment at the EU level. So one of the ideas of this work for this report is also to make sure that we look at monitoring issues, we look at available data that have shorter horizons so we can look at most updated versions. We look also at Bureau van Dijk data, the Orbis database, to compare Chinese companies, EU 27 companies, UK, Japan, and US companies to find the major finding is that the average R&D intensity, and this is the ratio between the R&D expenditure and the sales, is the least in the EU 27 member states. When we compare with the next best is the UK, then Japan, then China, and the US companies are top performers in terms of R&D intensity. So when you look at the expenditure data for R&D, European companies perform quite well. They invest a lot, but when you compare this to the sales ratio with sales, we are the least performers in this group of countries, major economies. Now, these are the findings we have from our work with experts in Europe. We validated our technological pathways, and we find some key technological decarbonization pathways like electrification, use of green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, carbon capture for utilization, materials efficiency, secondary sources, industrial symbiosis, etc. The engineers know very well what I'm talking about, and what we analyzed also is the application of these new technologies to specific sectors. Like, for example, carbon capture and storage has the highest capacity for cement and lime, chemicals, iron and steel. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion when the industry experts will talk about this. And as I'm an economist, I would refrain from further discussions on this, but I would look forward to what the industry can tell us and what the researchers can tell us about this. So my final point for the road carbon technology roadmap is that we came up with key findings. There are some investment gaps. There are some Green Deal objectives we need to meet. There are some issues with patents and green standards, and we find solutions for that. On the right side, you see the suggested actions at the EU level, and one of them is, for example, the Industrial Alliance or similar initiative to be established for low carbon technologies in energy-intensive industries. Another one is that I'm going to talk next about it, is the European Research Area Policy Agenda. First-of-a-kind installations, plants that require a lot of investment is also on our agenda, green patents, and the cooperation with European Standardization Organization is something the European Commission will facilitate. Now, on the next steps, we do have European Research Area Action 12 on acceleration of the digital and green transition in key industrial ecosystems. First focus on the low carbon technology, and the next focus is on circular technologies. We are currently developing a new roadmap on circular technologies, and we need also the support of Bulgaria and other member states to develop together this roadmap, as we did for the low carbon. And we feed this into the agenda of the updated industrial strategies, which is, we call them transition pathways for the EU energy-intensive industries ecosystem. Now, in terms of ERA policy agenda, what the Action 12 is about is the objective is to link primarily, the objective is to link research and innovation and industrial policies to bring all the important actors of the industrial ecosystems to transfer knowledge, business solutions, move ahead with the acceleration of the digital and green transition. We do have 4 activities and 2 process-related consultation aspects. On the activities, it's not only the Industrial Tech Roadmap that we partner with member states under the European Research Area Forum, but we also partner with key stakeholders. These are the big research industrial associations in Europe that we want to work together on the industrial technology roadmaps, but also work on the technological infrastructures, which is a new policy, new concept that we're trying to establish. We also work together with the European Innovation Council on developing the ERA Action 12, and we will address the social adaptation of the green and digital transitions. These are outcomes of the ERA Action 12, one on the industrial tech roadmaps, another one on the circular. We have separate activities on technology infrastructure, social adaptation, and work with the European Innovation Council on law and other TRL levels of investment. But we have the responsibility of member states to take part in our workshops, seminars, studies, because we want to develop together this work at the EU level. And we have outputs like publications of important studies, like the roadmap we published is one of the outcomes. Finally, and I'm very close to my final words, this is the timeline for the ERA Action 12. Dear colleagues and friends, out of 20 actions, 6 were confirmed as of today. Just 2 days ago in Brussels, there was a meeting with member states, and we understand that ERA Action 12 has commitments of 16 member states. Bulgaria is one of them. There are other Eastern European members that are part of ERA Action 12, which means that this action, because it requires at least 40 member states to sign for it, it means that we will work together with member states and key stakeholders for the next 2 years to develop together this acceleration of the digital and green transition. And we do have also 3 associated countries. Israel is one of them, Norway another one, and 5 key stakeholders. We have put together a proposal of the Commission is to target some of the activities, like in Q2 2023, we start to talk about improving the monitoring of industrial R&I investments at European and national levels, and this is something I I already mentioned to you that it's important to monitor regularly R&I investments. We will find together with member states the tools how to do that. My final words. First, the roadmap that we put together with member states in cooperation with other stakeholders and experts will facilitate low carbon technologies in energy intensive industries across Europe. Second, there are R&I investment needs, and we need to fill these needs by 2050. It will require 34.5 billion at least, and multiply by 24 for deployment of low carbon technologies. My third takeaway would be that countries like Bulgaria and Eastern Europe overall need to focus on the recovery and resilience mechanism and the ERDF funding to put more resources more efficiently into low carbon technologies in energy intensive industries, to go into a level of more contribution for climate neutrality of Europe. And the final point is under ERA Action 12, which is the next phase of work with member states and key stakeholders. We need to go together with the partners, and the European Commission is there to facilitate this work. We need to work together to establish best practice models, to share knowledge, to share studies, work together on roadmaps, and develop national strategies for low carbon technologies, for circular technologies that will improve our standing in terms of climate neutrality objectives of the European Green Deal. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Evgeniev. This was very inspiring because it shows that the European Union is thinking strategic. It's thinking about competing with the research and innovation giants. I would say Japan, South Korea, increasingly China. So this is a much more concrete, in my view, kind of attempt to merge European Green Deal objectives with concrete funding priorities, investment needs, technology by technology. And it's a bit kind of pessimistic to see that there is still a large disconnect between the funding priorities that member states put on, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, largely on large infrastructure projects with dubious commercial viability, instead of focusing on R&D and taking up the potential, the long-term potential of the industry and the local economy. Talking about Central and Eastern Europe, I will go very locally now and switch the gears to Bulgaria and ask my colleague, Dr. Radostina Primova. Is there a technical problem? Or?
Yeah, just there. I would need also a computer. Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. So I would like to ask my colleague, Dr. Radostina Primova, to present CSD's scenarios for long-term decarbonization of the economy with a focus on the industrial transformation. This is a now 5-year effort done together with partners from all EU 27 countries, coordinated by some of the most renowned institutes in Europe, including Climact in Belgium, Cambridge Econometrics in the UK, Agora Energiewende in Germany, etc., etc. And CSD is the Bulgarian partner focusing on developing concrete long-term decarbonization scenarios in 5 sectors: energy, industry, transportation, agriculture and land use, and what else? Buildings and buildings. So today we'll focus on industry, and I think it's the sector that member states, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, pay least attention to, because it's easier to talk about energy decarbonization, energy sector decarbonization. This is kind of the lowest hanging fruit, but it's much more difficult to coordinate policy action and industrial action on decarbonization of some of the most energy intensive sectors. And I would like to hear more about it from Radostina. Radostina, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. A warm welcome to the audience here in the room and to everyone joining us internationally. It's great to see this big interest in the event here in Sofia. First of all, I would like to use the occasion to particularly congratulate the team of Evgeny and Angelo at the DG Research and Innovation for the great work they have done with this technological roadmap in outlining the list of low carbon technologies, and in particular the investment, identifying the investment gaps. This could be a great guidance document also for member states to develop their strategy and their own technology roadmaps at national level. As already Martin mentioned, before I start the presentation, I would like to mention that CSG is the first institute in Bulgaria to develop long-term decarbonization strategies for the whole economy. So in the power sector, buildings, land use and agriculture, transport and industry. Currently we're also working on incorporating some of these scenarios also as part of our work in the consultative committee on the European Green Deal to become part of the Bulgarian long-term strategy for decarbonization that is upcoming as part of the reforms of the National Recovery Plan. Today we'll zoom in particular into the industrial decarbonization pathways, and I will present two scenarios on which we worked in particularly, and so the policy scenario and the long-term decarbonization scenario. So the first scenario, basically, we decided today to focus on two ones. The policy scenario is based on the current policy framework that exists, in particularly the current NECP and the National Recovery Plan. And the second scenario, the more ambitious scenario, is more aligned with the long-term decarbonization goal of the European Union and sets more ambitious targets in the different sectors. Zooming in, first of all, having a look at the whole decarbonization trajectory of the economy, we can already see with the current policy scenarios, Bulgaria will not fulfill its target for becoming carbon neutral by 2050. If we already look at the current policy framework, this is because by 2050 we'll have net emissions of 15 million tons CO2. Emissions will fall sharply in the power sector. However, they will still contribute to 30% of the emissions. However, we already see that the industry will be one of the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions with the current policy framework by 2050. And we don't see any transformative shifts there, neither in the industry nor in the transport sector, if we take into account these scenarios. Our tool, the Pathway Explorer, currently allows us to make also specification of how carbon pricing is affecting emissions. So we could analyze in particularly the emissions in the ETS and non-ETS sector. Here we already see that in particular, if we already have a look into this is also again the policy scenarios in the non-ETS sector, that the NECP relies too much on negative emissions, which are based on false assumptions that the carbon sequestration will play too much role in reducing Bulgaria emissions, and by 2050 in the land use sector we'll have minus 30 million ton CO2 emissions, which is based on extrapolation of the increase of negative emissions in the land use sector, which is not realistic because it is based on the fact that forests will, on the growth of the forests, which, as we have seen from the forestry plan, they will not grow in the same way as before. So there is an urgent need for aligning the current NECP with the Fit for 55 targets, and in particular the higher emission reduction targets of 55% at the European level. If we already zoom in into the industry sector in particular and the ETS split, so here we see not only that emissions will decline by 2030 and 2050, but they will increase, reaching in particular 6.3 million tons CO2 emission by 2050, and 5.3 million ton CO2 emission by 2030. So this rise will be mostly driven by emissions in the chemical sector that will account for 50% of the emissions, and followed up by emissions in particular in the ceramic and cement sector. Here we already see that the two drivers that will key for that are key for the greenhouse gas emission trajectory and the energy demand trajectory, in particular, is the fuel mix and also the resource, the efficiency of the materials. In the non-ETS sector, there is also a gradual increase of emission, which is also led by increase of emissions in the chemical sector. In this policy scenario, we also don't see any role foreseen in the policy framework for hydrogen and synthetic fuels that would be essential for the industry to decarbonize by 2030 and 2050. And this is something that has to be considered in the revision of the NECP and current strategic documents. The other thing which is related to the energy demand, we see also an increase actually in energy demand from 43 terawatt hours to 44 terawatt hours. It's not shown here, but it's in the next graph. And if we already look in the natural gas demand, we see that the Bulgarian industry is very vulnerable on its dependence on natural gas. In particularly, the energy demand, so the gas covers 1/3% of the energy demand, 1/3 of the energy demand in the industry in the policy scenario. Here in our energy security and climate index that CSG is also developing, we see that Bulgaria is also one of the most vulnerable countries to geopolitical risks related to energy security, in particular the security of natural gas imports. And here the risk is much higher than the EU average. If we already look at the industry sector, the final consumption there of natural gas is 5 times more than in the other sectors. It's not only that the policy scenario won't be the one that will achieve, with which Bulgaria will achieve its long-term decarbonization commitments, but it is also the one which exposes Bulgaria to the highest energy security risk as well. So then what needs to change in order for Bulgaria to reach its carbon neutrality goal? We already see that the other scenario, the more ambitious scenario, which is the long-term, the one aligned with the long-term decarbonization strategy, is the one with which Bulgaria could unlock its decarbonization potential here. Due to a couple of factors. First of all, in this scenario, by 2050, emissions will fall to 2 million tons CO2. We see also a different trajectory in terms of energy efficiency and energy demand. In particular, electrification will constitute 40% of the energy demand, and here natural gas by 2050 will shrink with 95%. And so we already see introduction and higher use of synthetic fuels and green hydrogen, which need to accelerate in particularly faster in the chemical sector. So which are the major components for moving to low carbon energy transition? First of all, we need to lower energy demand. The Bulgarian industry is currently 2.5% more energy intensive than the EU average. We need also to optimize the material use in order to create more supply chains based on circular economy. For example, in the car manufacturing, our models shows that 20% of the steel need to be replaced by chemical products and 40% by aluminum by 2050. And in new buildings, in particular, 20% of the steel has to be replaced by wood, and also 40% of the cement has to be replaced by wood. So we talk about very costly production processes, and also restructuring, and also more efficient use of materials. The third and very important, we need to electrify energy consumption, and this needs to happen with the massive uptake of renewable energy-based sources, also with the use of synthetic fuels, also the capturing of carbon through carbon capture and utilization technology in industrial processes, for which we need a strong governmental push because these technologies are capital intensive. As the EU technology roadmap has shown, there a huge public support would be needed, in particularly to support the energy intensive industries to introduce these technologies to the manufacturing process. In the ETS split, we already see also a reduction of emissions. Here again, the chemical, also in these scenarios, the chemical sector is the leading one. However, emissions here already fall to 3.2 million tons CO2 in the ETS sector, and they also gradually reduce in the non-ETS sector, as you can see from the ETS split. So what is needed in order to already achieve this kind of transformative shift in industrial decarbonization? First of all, as I already mentioned, to electrify the energy-intensive industrial processes. Second and more important is already allocate and leverage EU and national funding, and in particular allocate a big part of the national funding and also EU funding to research and development, and in particular increasing the share of research, development, deployment and demonstration projects. We need also to alleviate regulatory and administrative bottlenecks for industrial-based power plants, and have a regulation on industrial prosumers. This is something lacking in the Bulgarian legislation. So basically we need to update our regulatory framework, and this includes the possibility of signing corporate power purchase agreement already directly with the renewable energy developer or as sole users, avoiding the electricity grid, which would facilitate the procedure. Also, the government needs to support high emission sectors to reduce energy demand, also via tertiary sector tenders. And energy efficiency in this sector, the energy efficiency gain could benefit a lot, in particular the energy intensive industries. And this could be achieved through setting targets, monetary use, retrofitting technology, and as I mentioned, increasing the research, demonstration, development, and deployment part. If we already look at the different processes that need to occur for the, in particular, we need to accelerate the electrification for low and medium temperature process, and for high temperature process, we need this green hydrogen. And it's already, as we already seen, not only also building the low carbon infrastructure to distribute green electricity and green hydrogen directly to industrial sites will be very capital intensive. So the industry also needs to work with the DCOs, the TCOs and the energy supplier in terms of energy planning and facilitating this process. We need also a special research and development program for different green hydrogen alternatives and combined use of renewable energy sources and carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies. As we already seen, we don't see this in the recovery plan, so we think that 1/3 of the funding of the operational program related to human resources and also the component education as part of the national recovery plans should be in particularly dedicated to industrial decarbonization, reskilling programs and digital platforms, and should be focused in particular in Bulgaria and the core regions to enable this kind of green economic diversification there and preparing the labor force for this green transformation, but also it needs to remove some of the bottlenecks of the mismatch of skills mismatch on the Bulgarian labor market. You also need to use our potential in some of the low carbon infrastructure and services like IT outsourcing and manufacturing of machinery, and also the production of intermediary goods in order to create, to expand green startups and businesses there. And we need to focus in particularly on goods with higher value and like enforcing green standards instead of depending on mineral extraction. As we see in the future, one of the biggest climate and energy security risks will be our dependence on minerals. Yeah, that's why we need also a higher recycling rates of metals, plastics, and many of these products. So setting up the whole circular economy. One idea is to set up a sub-program on recycling raw materials in Southeast Europe that directly in the industrial sites. And last but not least, this is a major component, is financing. And so we need big government support, and we need to leverage all the finance. So currently in the recovery plan, we have 800 million euro in the smart industry component, and in addition already to additional funding in the operational program on competitiveness and innovation that already includes some components on increasing energy efficiency in the industry sector. But considering the challenge of reducing the carbon intensity there, we need to attract and to create additional tools for attracting private and institutional investors. And this could be also part of the decarbonization fund, could be used for this purpose. In addition, this could be facilitated through tax incentive, loans, also enforcing higher manufacturing standards. And last but not least, the transition in the industrial sector should go hand in hand with the digital transition. And that's why I'm very happy that we will have also participants that will also talk about the importance of the digital transition in the Bulgarian industry.
Thank you so much, Heros. Thank you for this very comprehensive overview and for the great policy takeaways. There is a real disconnect, as I mentioned before, between planning, which is very centralized, and actual needs and demands from key stakeholders locally and from the industry. So with no further ado, I would actually ask the beneficiaries of these funds and the beneficiaries and implementers of the reforms and optimization practices to come to the podium. So the panelists, the industrial panelists, and I'm very happy to consider many small details about all of these issues that Rados presented today. And I'll open the discussion immediately, just not to waste time and to have more time for discussion and question and answers. I would ask Dr. Aleksander Subulewski from Poland, who is our esteemed Polish guest, and I would like to ask him to frame the discussion a little bit. He's the director of the Institute on Energy and Fuel Processing Technology, so an engineer, as he mentioned yesterday during dinner. Probably one of the few people in the room that actually understand how these decarbonization processes can happen from a technological point of view. But before going into the technical details that we may actually not understand, I would ask him to frame what are the main challenges in the short run and in the long run for achieving this technological uptake, and with a focus on Central and Eastern Europe per se. Because, as I mentioned, it is difficult to do this convergence between Central and Eastern Europe, especially on low carbon technological uptake, because of many obstacles that may not have anything to do with technology, but with governance, economics, populism, and bad governance. So can you list the main, maybe the 5 main challenges before this process?
No, first of all, many thanks for kind invitation. So my first time in Bulgaria and first time in Sofia, so it's a nice place. And of course, the topic of our discussion is very important for present and for future for Europe. Let me start for very simply graph from a presentation of graph number 2 and 3. And please find, if you remember the pathways for make a decarbonization of the power generation, for example, going very rapidly down, and if you compare for industry, it's still staying on the same level up to 2050.
Yeah.
So what this means? That means, first of all, that this is more complicated. And it's easy to make a decarbonization of power generation, or for example, to replacement for the vehicles from the gasoline and diesel to the electric vehicles. But to change the whole economy, and especially the industry, and replace and make them going to the very low carbon emission, it will be very complicated process. And first of all, why? Because there is a lot of different processes. There's not only one process, there's a lot of industry, different industry. Show, of course, the steel, cement, glass, lime, and other chemical industry, of course, and petrochemical. So this is, every one of them need different technology. And the question is, of course, all the time the same. The first is the money, and the second is the time. So we need time and we need money. If we put more money, the time could be shorter. But anyway, and next, let me move to one of your slides. It is the spend of the money for R&D coming from the private and coming from the state money and from the European. And please find that more or less 80% is coming from the business. So we must first of all give the information to the businessman that the energy transition is absolutely necessary, and it will be. This is not a question, will be or not. We must be sure that it will be. So we must spend the money, our own money, because it's your future. How to do that? You know, in Poland, for example, it's not easy. Everyone, businessman, sitting on the situation that think about the business as usual. So I have a problem for today, problem for tomorrow, and if some ask me the question how to think about what will be in 2035, the businessman said, it's not my business. Maybe it will be in the future. Give me a green electricity, give me a cheap green electricity, a lot of cheap green electricity, and in this moment I'll start to discuss about the transition of my business. And this is absolutely not good thinking. We must go in parallel. The one, fight about the new sources of energy, green energy, and the second, to going step by step and replace for new technology and show that it will be possible from the technical point of view, and it will be a very good business to make a modernization of his activity. And I suppose that this is key problem. How to explain, not to politicians, how to explain to the businessmen that it will be a good business for them for the next 25 years. And I, for the other side, I fully understand the businessmen, because please find, they have a lot of problems with the crisis, a lot of problems with the crisis, at present the war, and so on, so on, so on. And we must put them one stone more. Let's to think about the future for 25 years. And I'm afraid that this same situation will be in all European countries. And one more point as a start for this discussion, this panel discussion, why are we sitting here in Sofia? Why are we not sitting, for example, in Munich or in Paris? Because the situation is that our countries, coming from the Central Europe, it will be absolutely necessary to play more important role to increase and improve the technology. Not only to be an importer of technology, of course, the first German one technology from the Netherlands, from the France, but the same give our input to the common Europe and prepare some these technologies. And of course, to create the new technology, absolutely necessary is to going step by step via pilot scale, via demonstration scale, and we must find European money to implement, first of all, a demonstration scale installation in different Central European countries to show to our businessmen, and the same to guys from Italy, to guys from Spain, that is possible, and it will be a very good business for them.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we always blame politicians for the slow progress. Maybe we need to also shift a little bit of blame to businessmen, but in the sense that we need to empower them with EU funds, but not only empower them with less regulatory bottlenecks, you know, easier access to the different instruments, and you know, a transparent and you know, corruption-free environment so that they can implement their investment, because this is also one of the issues that CSD focuses on. Thank you so much for this overview, and now I will go directly into kind of the heart of it, so to one of the biggest energy-intensive industries in Bulgaria. I'll give the floor to Mr. I'm sorry for pronouncing the name, Hüseyin Yorucu, I hope it's correct, who is the executive director of Alcomet AD, which is one of the biggest aluminium producers in the country, and one of the most energy intensive, I would assume, companies in the country. So I'll ask you about the limits to energy efficiency, in a way. This is kind of a provocative question. And what are the necessary enabling factors that could make a company like yours switch to alternative fuels for its energy consumption? Is that possible? What is the limit to that? You know, is it about money, or is it about technological limitations as well?
Well, the short answer is both are important. First of all, I want to thank you this morning. Very interesting reports, especially the roadmap Dr. Evgeniev presented. I read it before. It was fascinating for me. There are a lot of interesting statistics inside it, and general solutions for the transformation issue, energy transformation. By the way, I'm not used to the terminology used between yourselves. I can't continue with all this abbreviation, so you have to excuse me for that. It was very interesting, and also Dr. Primova, the Bulgarian information on the same thing, it was very interesting. Now, the roadmap is clear. We have to increase the green electricity consumption and reduce the fossil fuel consumption. And to do that, the power sector is more intensely studied. Their steps are more clear. But in industry, there are certain processes that can be conducted using electric energy. There are other processes for which only gas is a suitable alternative at the moment. And in the roadmap for this sort of, when you come to the bowl and you can't move anywhere else, the suggestion is to start research and innovation and find alternative techniques where you don't have to use gas, you have to use electric energy, obviously. So this has to be done. But this is not an immediate solution. This is maybe 20 years, maybe 10 years later to be implemented. Presently, what can be done in a quick, short time is really important question. Especially after the war in Ukraine, certain things become even more acute, especially the gas supply. So we have to find alternatives using the existing structure of distribution. As inside the reports, hydrogen seems to be an interesting alternative, a good alternative. We may be able to use existing structure to distribute hydrogen. But apart from that, For industry, the important thing is finding alternative solutions for specific energy types and to transfer to electricity as quickly as possible. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, it's an optimistic message. I'm used to hearing businesses complain that everything is impossible. So we have done the best we can do. So it's good that you actually advocate for more. And from that point of view, I'll give the floor to Martin Katinov, who is replacing the speaker that was announced in the agenda, Ivaro Georgiev from Aurubis AD, which is, I think, the largest company in Bulgaria right now. And probably the largest energy consumer, or one of the largest energy consumers, one of the largest investors in the country, with key role for certain part of the country, central Bulgaria. So the floor is yours, Mr. Katinov. You are the manager of energy projects at Aurubis, and I would like you to focus on the role of renewable energy, local systems for power generation, as a way to decentralize from the grid and to decrease energy costs, but also the role of corporate PPAs. Is that possible on a massive scale? What are the regulatory maybe bottlenecks for such transformation? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. From our point of view, the energy security and decarbonization pathway is very important part of our strategy and policy. We have many challenges in this way, but from one side, the high prices of electricity, from other side, the volatility of the energy market, which are these days, but also this is an opportunity for us to develop our own renewable sources, which make us more self-reliant, also to improve our energy efficiency and to develop a PPA contracts with renewable energy producers, which will give us some predictability in this complex political and economic situation. From the point of view of the own renewable energy sources, we already installed one PV plant, which is 10 megawatts, and now we are planning to install additional 10 to 12 megawatts. Also, we are working on projects for heat recovery of our own heat, which will give us opportunity to produce electricity from steam. Also, we are researching the possibilities for generation of electricity from wind and water also. We have actively researching the possibility of energy storages, and our colleagues from Germany are making tests with hydrogen in the production site. So we are trying to have how to say variety mix of different renewable own energy sources, which will give us much opportunity for the future. Also, we have the ambitious target until 2030. 20% of our electricity needs to be covered by our own renewable sources. From the point of view of the energy efficiency, next month we are rating our certificate in ISO 50001 for energy management, which will give us the opportunity to have better control and monitoring of our consumption, and also to give us potentials for improvement with different targets and projects in that energy efficiency.
Thank you for especially the last couple of sentences, because they are a great segue to our next speaker. I'm just having a very quick follow-up question. When you talk about hydrogen systems introduced in your plant, do you consider green hydrogen? Do you see the nexus between your own renewable energy plants on the ground with green hydrogen production, or this is gray or
for sure we are talking about green hydrogen, and our future strategy in more investing in renewables will be also related to this.
Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, your focus on optimization of business processes via digital solutions is a great segue, because I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Nicola Stoyanov, who is the Business Development Manager at Interconsul Bulgaria. I'll introduce his speech by saying that the cliche in our circles, which is the cheapest energy is the energy saved. And we didn't touch upon that part as much. We talked a lot about supply solutions, I think, but there are a lot to be done on the demand side. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Stoyanov to discuss how his company, but also generally, what is the European trend in digitalization of energy consumption and optimization of consumption patterns.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all on behalf of ICB to have this opportunity to speak on this high forum. So what we are focusing within ICB and in the area of IT is on developing and deploying different types of energy management, energy management systems, perhaps similar like the one that our Rubies are going to use right now. And for what we have seen from our actual experience with the business is that in most cases the deployment of such system alone is capable of delivering up to 30% of reduction in the use of energy. Under different forms. We're talking here about not only the use of energy, purely electricity or gas, but also the use of, let's say, consumption of oil, reduction of costs of maintenance. And the bottom line is that all those materials are a waste of energy to be produced. So cutting down on all costs of the organization is what we are aiming at. And also the other interesting thing is something that Dr. Evgeniev mentioned, that they had difficulties in crafting this report due to the lack of real-time data. At least this is how I understood it. So this is the other thing that we are focusing on. It is delivering real-time data and the possibility to, on a legislation level, to develop something like a green passport for every good that hits the market. So everybody will have the possibility to just scan a QR code and see what is the percentage of renewable energy that goes into the manufacturing of this product. What is the percentage of CO2 emissions that were generated to manufacture this good. And this is another thing that we can say here is that this, we believe, will give the power to the consumer. And right now, everybody, in terms of consumer-wise, more people are orientating their choices towards the environment. So everybody wants to consume a product that it's somewhat good for the environment. So the consumers are putting pressure on the business to deliver such optimization. And I think that with, again, it's not our topic, but with minor adjustments in the lawmaking, this thing could become the norm, and people will just go and optimize their manufacturing of whatever kind. So this is...
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for raising the issue of data. This is one of our mottos. CSD's motto is to do evidence-based research and evidence-based policy solutions. Many times in Bulgaria, but I would say this applies to all of Europe, decisions are taken ad hoc based on hunches, based on also populist beliefs, and not on a systematic cost-benefit assessment. Also, I would like to raise the issue that monitoring energy consumption is bringing quite a lot of value in buildings for households, but I'm pretty sure that the bigger uptake in the industry would deliver actually even greater benefits, because that's where the symbiosis with engineering teams and business executives could be better, because it's harder to convince households to invest in energy efficiency, but I think it's easier to convince business owners because it's about profit. So and the fact that they are now reaching out also to these ESG standards, gives us a hope that there will be an internal demand to decarbonize and improve energy consumption. Last but not least, I'll give the floor to Ivaro Najdenov, who is the Executive Director of the Bulgarian Federation of Industrial Energy Consumers, who is, I would say, one of the best energy experts in Bulgaria, focusing on, he's also a nuclear physicist, engineer. Sorry for that. And I'll ask him to kind of summarize the discussion on the one hand, but also look for some proposals on the short run and on the long run to overcome the security of supply crisis with a focus on the industrial demands and considering the likely Russian gas supply cut in the following months, but also talk about long-term solutions to decrease the dependence of the industry on foreign, on imported energy, and how can we put this all together in line with decarbonization targets on European level. So I know this is a very big task, but that's why I wanted this to be for the last discussion, because I want this to be the framing for the whole event.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I was just about to say that you gave me a tall order. In general, I tend to agree with what was said in our panel. But yeah, I'm glad to hear from Mr. Sobolevsky that he affirmed my opinion that there is no one-size-fits-all. And that's good to be articulated, not only among engineers, but among everyone. I would like to make a distinction between the large enterprises and the small enterprises, because we used to speak about the economy, the economy, the economy. Now we are starting to realize that there is industry, there is buildings, there is services, households. We need to differentiate the different sectors. Now we need to do this one once again, industry. But let's say we have big industry, we have smaller manufacturing facilities. Energy intensive industry is not always big industry. We have small enterprises in Bulgaria that are energy intensive, let's say smaller foundries or something like that. They consume relatively less energy, but still use energy intensive processes. So maybe the task is to get to the next level in differentiation, and the data gathering will be useful for that. I don't know if there is a representative of the Sustainable Development Agency in Bulgaria. They had a project for data collection, so if there is someone there in the public, I would like to hear what they have achieved in this topic. I'd like to say that more or less the big enterprises in Bulgaria, the ones that have the resource, are doing more or less the right steps towards decarbonization. And it's not policy driven, it's market driven. You see your energy bill and you start thinking how to optimize. You are exporter. 80% of Bulgarian manufactured production by the energy intensive industries is exported. Our main market is Germany. Our main competitors in the EU are the German manufacturers, the Italian manufacturers, the Polish, the Czech manufacturers, the French manufacturers. You need to be competitive. With higher prices of energy in Bulgaria, you need to be more efficient. And because you need to sell. You need to pay your investments, get your investments back, and you need to work because you employ 1,000 people or 1,500 people. You're a regional, you're not only a manufacturer that is key for the Bulgarian economy, you're a manufacturer that is key for the regional economy. Rubis is such an example, Alcumet is such an example. We see the terrible regional policy in Bulgaria, and that almost everything is concentrated in Sofia and a few other places a bit less. But some of the old industrial centers have managed to survive. But some of the things cannot be done without government support. And by government support, I don't necessarily talk about subsidies. As an example, Dr. Primova mentioned renewable energy PPAs. It's allowed in Bulgaria. We can contract renewable energy of the energy exchange, but currently the energy producers, the renewable energy producers, which are mainly solar producers that, as far as I know, tend to conclude these types of PPAs, they cannot give us the profile we need. We are base industries. We consume 24/7. So when we almost every big enterprise in Bulgaria has a project for its own solar power installation. It also produces during the peak hours. So you need to balance that out. How? Well, the obvious question is, the obvious answer is storage. But, well, storage is still expensive. And my personal opinion is it won't get any cheaper. And with the mineral security, with the especially battery storage, and with mineral security, well, lithium is mined in Australia and South America, but 90% of the manufacturing of lithium hydroxide is in China. And why it's in China? Because we don't want these types of production in Europe, which is also energy-intensive industry, but it's also perceived as dirty industry. So we also need to take into account that because the same applies for PV cells as well. So some of the disasters are of our own making. So we need support to get affordable storage, because this investment should support the decrease of our power bill, not increase it. And my personal belief, but I think that it's an opinion shared among the industrial community, is that in the recovery plan, part of the financing for storage solutions should have gone to the industry. Because now we are supporting PV plants with storage, but PV plants are market competitive. They don't need further support. Yeah. We needed some type of, let's say, co-investment to leverage this initial, let's say, I don't know, facilitation for implementing this technology. Another thing that has been done in the resilience plan is that in the industrial decarbonization part of, of the plan, the industries that fall within the ETS were excluded. Well, these are the industries you need to decarbonize. Why exclude them? No. And also the small, not so small stones on our way. Here in Bulgaria, we have a lot of belated homework to do. We need to finish the market reform. With this high exposure of spot market prices, planning, production planning, pricing, competing for getting, let's say, manufacturing jobs becomes even more difficult. Now I'll share a story, and I apologize because I went beyond the 7 minutes. But the last week I had a phone call with our economic representative in Hamburg. And he told me that he had some investment interest from German companies in Bulgaria, but they wanted 5-year contract for electricity. And he asked me to tell him about the market in Bulgaria. And I said to him, well, in theory it's possible. In practice, that's something that Bulgarian market has never seen. So we have a lot of backlog of work to do. Concerning the natural gas, some of the processes need natural gas, but natural gas is a methane molecule. If you could synthesize it cheaply and get the same price or lower price of synthetic CH4, it will be changed based on the market principle. But here the sunken cost is in the research and development. The no-brainer option, but that's not the immediate application, is to replace methane in fertilizer and oil refining processes, because it's used as a raw material to produce hydrogen. And the byproduct is CO2, and it goes through the stack, and you go to the ETS to pay 90 euro per ton. So that's the immediate application industrial I see for hydrogen. The question is, will we be able to produce enough hydrogen and to produce it at a competitive price? So I won't use anymore the word cheap, but the word competitive. Because if you have expensive hydrogen, but the natural gas is more expensive, well, but here, and it's a task for the European Union and the European Commission, how to make our industry competitive to the Chinese manufacturers, to the United States manufacturers, Indian manufacturers, South American manufacturers, and I'm afraid the CBAM won't work.
Thank you. This was very detailed.
Can I
yes,
make some comments?
jump in, yes.
Well, of course, I fully agree, and it's very good that we start such a discussion. I have exactly the same kind of thinking. But a few comments for our panel and as well in general. So we have, to summarize, we have a fantastic roadmap. But for this roadmap, we must find some priorities. Because if you try to focus for every one point, it will be not sense. So what kind of priorities from my personal point of view should be? So the first one, the green electricity will be absolutely necessary, and we know how to do that. We must only to scaling up, but we know the wind, solar, biomass and waste, and that's all in a practical point of view. So we must install more and more and more. And it's existing technology. So in my opinion, we have two main points in two directions. The first one, and I absolutely agree, that it will be energy storage. In every one solar farm, which I have a contact in Poland, and a customer asked me the question, let's start to construct the new farm, 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts. All the time, my first question is, what about the storage? And the investor said, why? I said, because you will be not able to sell the product. Because everyone produces when the days like today, fantastic sun, there is a negative price of electricity, but it will be better and you have a good storage. And after that, you put the energy when the price is going up. So the first one, we must put attention for the different methods for energy storage in a massive scale. And this is absolutely not discussion about batteries. The batteries is only for electricians to make electrical, to smooth as an operation of the grid, but not for energy storage. And please find that, if I remember last week, it was start up a new installation in Switzerland to a hydro power pumping plant for 900 megawatts. 900 megawatts. So we must find a different technology as well to use a CO2, to use a high pressure air, to be cheap, to be possible to use it in a massive scale. So this is the first one. And if you have a lot of green electricity, and if you have a storage system, the next step, of course, is the hydrogen in a massive scale. And the hydrogen, we must go in parallel. The first one, how to produce the electrolyzers, and I fully agree that is absolutely nonsense. This is will be the idiots if we replace Russian gas by the technology coming from China. This is the same. This is dancing with the devil. So we must be sure that it's possible to make some factories for the production of the electrolyzers in Europe in a massive scale and have a feedstock for the production.
Yeah.
And the final one, the parallel in this one, we must going step to step to replace a fuel in industry when the electricity is not enough. So we have a lot of high temperature processes. He told about this high temperature processes when the electricity is not possible. And of course, how to do that? We must go in step to step, and I remember your question to my neighbor, what kind of hydrogen? So gentlemen, every kind of hydrogen. For today, every kind. Of course, I'm not a fan of the gray one, but the blue one with the carbon capture. And of course, the discussion about how to make a logistic with hydrogen and storage, it's very complicated. Believe me, it's really very complicated. And so this is the point number 2, and that's all. And next, we are able to move to the new kind of technologies, like you told the same. For example, the natural gas, synthetic natural gas, to make a synthesis when you make a carbon capture and going to the utilization. But of course, when you have a CO2 as a capture CO2, we make a green hydrogen and make a synthesis for SNG. So this is fantastic technology. My institute work about this in a pilot scale at present. It's very costly, but if it will be a lot of hydrogen, if it will be necessary to make a carbon capture processes, it's a future. And this is one big advantage of this technology, that we have an infrastructure. Believe me, it's 10,000 times easier to make a transfer pipeline for methane than for hydrogen.
Yeah. Dr. Sobolewski, thank you for the great comments. I'm conscious of the time. We have around 10 minutes. So I'll immediately open the floor to questions from the audience here, and maybe on YouTube if there's someone following that. Please go ahead. Professor Kościev, please. And please present yourself when you take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. My name is Georgi Kościev. I'm a retired professor in nuclear power reactors and nuclear technology. And at present I work as a scientific advisor to the management of Kozloduy NPP. I have no question, I just want to put some information about the activities of Kozloduy NPP.
Can you speak up a little bit, sorry? I think the microphone doesn't work.
Thank you. As you know, Kozloduy NPP produces electricity with very low carbon emissions. And during the last decade, several projects have been done in order to increase the amount of electricity. First one was to replace some turbine and electrical components with higher efficiency. Result was that each unit now can produce up to 40 megawatts during the winter. The second big project was to increase the power capacity of the thermal capacity of each unit with 4 persons. And the final result of these two projects is that now the units produces 160 megawatts more than originally installed capacity. So this was probably the investment, the cheapest investment project in Bulgaria, maybe not only in Bulgaria. The other project was to increase the reliability of the operation and to maintenance and to optimize the schedule for maintenance. With this, the plant achieved a load factor at about 90%, which is higher than the medium for the sector. The final result was that in 2019 and 2020, the plant made 2 records for production of electricity. And in addition to this, now the next project is in place to install about 20 megawatts PV park at the plant, because the surface, the site is quite big and there's such possibility. Just for the purposes of this discussion, based on my almost 50 years experience in energy sector, I want to share with you that I'm quite skeptical about how these high targets for decarbonization of the industry could be achieved in the near future. Regrettably, the reality is that during 2021 and during this year, we don't see decarbonization. On the contrary, we see recarbonization of the industry. So probably this tendency has to be analyzed, and maybe the targets could be laid down to the reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kościev. Any other questions? If not, Ruslan Stefan.
Thank you. Very interesting discussion indeed. My question relates to what Evgeny and Radost were presenting, and of course wanted to include also Angelo if they want to take the stance. You mentioned enormous amounts of money, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, Evgeny mentioned 900 billion, and Rados mentioned also the huge amount of money that Bulgaria would need to invest. And this adds, Professor Sobolewski mentioned this, these are 80% comes from business. And my question to you as business representatives is, do you see this as feasible? I mean, and what would help unleash this investment prowess? Because there needs to be a lot of investment. We heard also from our Rubis that they're preparing all these projects in the pipeline, Alcomet is apparently working on that. The question is, do you have the feeling that we're going to make it? With all the worrying now, you know, on the immediate gas crisis, I'm thinking, do we really see it happening? I mean, are we closer than we were like 5 years ago? I mean, how does it look like, just as a general overview? And again, thank you very much for all the wonderful insights, and I hope that we could continue this conversation in the future. Thank you.
Who wants to take the floor? To you, Roger.
First of all, everybody is doing something. Nobody is sitting. There is a crisis. It's a serious crisis as far as energy is concerned, as far as gas supply is concerned. Everybody is trying to do what they can and then thinking what to do in future as well. The reports that have already been discussed give the outline in general, what can be done, what is possible. But when you come to specific industries, there are different solutions applicable to each one. And there is, in the reports mentioned, cross-fertilization between industries are also possible. What one solved, the other one can use it as a solution for their own problems. But the reports give the general outline as to how the whole thing can be solved. We have to go into green electricity, that is definite. And this is photovoltaics, wind energy, hydroelectric or thermoelectric from geothermal energy. These are all possible for Bulgaria. They are all applicable. And there are, I don't know if we use full hydroelectric potential of Bulgaria, but I don't think so. There is a lot of potential there that could be utilized, and the possibility of storing energy by pumping the water higher in a dam. This is also, at the moment, is in Bulgaria, but it's not working because there is some problem with the turbines. These are not rocket science. They are all, at the moment, presently available technologies. We have to go for them. And for us, we are applying for photoelectric power generation. But the bureaucracy is another problem that takes, you know, you can get it and install it in 1 month, 1 megawatt, and permission takes 1 year. This is not good. And I don't see any technical reason, so long as the project you have presented to the authorities are technically okay, there is no security or for human health reasons, problems. If it is a safe project, it should be applied. Everybody needs electricity, and this electricity will be available for everybody. Okay, we have to inform the regulators so that they know there is so much energy will be produced in such a place with photoelectric, so they can make compensation for that. But otherwise, this permission process should be quite automatic. It shouldn't take this sort of length. This is one side of the medallion. On the other side, instead to replace natural gas, it is quite difficult. It's not like electricity, where it's possible to go with electricity in your industrial production. Yes, it's possible to convert to that. It may be some investment extra, but it is possible. But there are certain processes that require coal and natural gas. These have to be reinvented. There is a lot of work has to go into it, and new technologies will have to be developed for those. And this will take time. It is not an immediate solution. It's not quick. You know, I've seen one report, I just remembered it, in 2014. it was saying the pipelines in Europe 60% full, there is 40% capacity. Don't worry, there is no problem about gas supply. But that is not the case. It is, the situation can change very quickly. COVID has shown us everything can be upside down in a very short time. And you have to create solutions quickly and adapt to new situation quickly. And I think industry has the impetus, it has the right sort of approach to make the changes where it is necessary. Investment is a matter of, this is a financial thing. You put something, you get something back. If it is worth, you do that. And sometimes if you don't have any other alternative, you have to do that. This is part of the picture. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Juruc. That was very insightful. I actually want to make a comment, just a very quick follow-up before I give you floor. We discussed with Dr. Wille yesterday that some of the compensation mechanisms have to be connected to certain investments that the industry is doing in replacing natural gas, coal with alternative fuels. Because, and this is kind of a comment to Professor Kościejew's remark, is that recarbonization happens also because there is excessive compensation right now by states. States are showering companies with money without attaching any conditions to that. So I'm thinking that this is one way to bridge the gap. And before closing, I'll give the floor to Mr. Coutinho for final remark, maybe.
I agree with Mr. Jurcu about the bureaucracy, and something additional to Mr. Stobulevski, what he says, that if we have more money, it will be faster, but the bureaucracy make all things slower. If you, although do you have money or not, yes, you need time because of the bureaucracy. And also about the investment from the business, for sure, my opinion is that the EU funds and also the recovery program should be also more related to the big companies and to the industry, because till now it's more focused on the small and medium. But also the big consumption is in the big industry.
Yeah, and Dr. Naidenov asked me for 1 minute.
Just a quick follow-up to Professor Kościejew's comment. I fully agree with him, and a personal opinion. I think nuclear should be part of the decarbonization, because a part of producing low carbon electricity, I think it creates a huge opportunity for large quantities of hydrogen production. And something I missed about the energy efficiency, I think that we need to change the incentives for energy efficiency targets in Bulgaria, because there are a lot of energy savings in the industry that are not certified, because the enterprises don't find stimuli to certify them. And to bear in mind something basic, increased energy efficiency can lead to increased energy consumption.
Yeah, the Jevons paradox. I love that. Thank you very much. This was amazing discussion. I really enjoyed it. I will listen to the recording and take some notes later. To finish off, I just want to look ahead a little bit. Apart from the short-term crisis that we're facing, there is a long-term discussion on where to put our priorities on, and 2023 will be the year when member states will be revising their NECPs, National Energy and Climate Plans. Many of these plans are very far away from realities, from the current realities, and very far away from the EU long-term objectives. And where there is most room for improvement is exactly industrial decarbonization. And in order to do good strategic documents that are actually cost-effective in the future, we need a good assessment. Assessments like the one by DG Research, by independent think tanks, that make a well evidence-based cost-benefit assessment so that we know whether nuclear energy is the right way forward, whether synthetic fuels are possible, whether green hydrogen can be used only in industry or also in transportation or in other sectors. So all of these issues need to stand on a firm evidence-based research, and we are lacking that. So my appeal to all of the stakeholders, because I see many representatives of key institutions here, is to look for an evidence-based research before taking decisions, because otherwise we get locked into dependencies that last for decades, and then we end up with a crisis like we have right now. Thank you so much for the discussion, and looking forward to more such events in the near future. Thank you.